This week, we're talking about behavioral and emotional mirroring.
You are listening to Love Your Job Before You Leave It, the podcast for ambitious, high-achieving women who are ready to stop feeling stressed about work and kiss burnout goodbye forever. Whether you're starting a business or staying in your day job, this show will give you the coaching and guidance you need to start loving your work today. Here's your host, career coach Corey Lynn.
Hey y'all, happy Wednesday. I probably don't sound as happy as normal, and quite frankly, I'm not. It's probably been a few weeks for you now hearing the podcast, but for me and my timeline, the Supreme Court decision that was previously leaked that impacts Roe versus Wade dropped on Friday, and I'm pretty upset about it. And the Supreme Court's also been making a lot of other decisions that I'm also pretty disappointed about and feeling very upset about. And I'm thinking a lot personally about like what actions I want to take, getting in touch with representatives, donating money, and just like thinking deeply about what's happening in the country I live in, the United States, and what kind of impact I want to have on that, what kind of things I want to do. And by things, I guess I really mean like what kind of activism I want to do, what kind of citizen I want to be in this country right now. And there's also been a lot of grieving. Recently, we had the podcast about like when things feel fucked. And so feel free to return to that if you're feeling like I'm feeling. If you're feeling overwhelmed or upset or ragey or honestly, like whatever feeling you're feeling, that podcast can be really helpful. And I think that a lot of the stuff I teach on the podcast can be useful for this moment in figuring out like how to navigate this and who you want to be in reflection to it, what you want to do, and like how to fuel yourself positively in a world that you may be feeling a lot of rage and grief about. But that's not actually what we're talking about today, although I think what we're talking about today will still be useful for this kind of stuff. So the topic I want to talk about today is mirroring, right? And so this can be emotional mirroring, it can be behavioral mirroring. And specifically, what I want to talk about is the way that like whatever we perceive about someone else, if we're not aware and choosing who we're going to be and how we're going to show up, we may mirror that person. And so there can be like upsides and downsides to this. And a lot of it's subconscious until you realize, right? So as an example, if you think someone else is like wonderful and fun, you may notice yourself being wonderful and fun with that person. It's like we perceive them as being wonderful and fun, and like that kind of feels really good to us. And so then we can show up in a way that is also could be described as wonderful and fun to our own experience, right? How other people perceive us is obviously outside of our control. And then the opposite can also happen. Like if we think someone else is being rude and disrespectful, sometimes we may then feel the urge to be like rude and disrespectful back. And again, rude and disrespectful according to our own definition of it, not according to like what the other person's going to perceive. And I think it's really impactful to know about this tendency. And honestly, like this may be related to mirror neurons, but I'm not really sure. So I don't know the science here. But what I do know is the lived experience and like what I've seen coaching tons of clients over many years. And I just want to be clear that I'm not saying you should take the high road, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be rude or disrespectful according to your own standards. I just want to point out the pattern so that you can decide on purpose what you want to do and then have your own back about doing that. I mentioned, I think in another podcast a long time ago, I coached a client once about the idea of like taking the high road. And I was like, isn't it interesting how the people who are often socialized to take the high road are people with marginalized identities? So I'm not necessarily a fan of like that as a thought framework, because I think sometimes when we say to ourselves, like, I should take the high road, what we really mean is like, I should be the bigger person, or like, I'm not going to bring this up even though I don't think it's okay or just. And so that's not what I'm suggesting at all. What I am suggesting is that what we perceive about other people colors our emotional experience and colors how we show up unless we slow that down and then make choices. And I'm a fan of slowing down and making choices just so that we get to decide who we're being, right? And I think it can apply for either one, because like in the 1 minute of research that I was doing before I started recording this podcast, it talked about how like mirroring and mimicry can be a tactic that people use if they want to build rapport with you. It can be a tactic that they use if they want to like seem charismatic to you. And like that can be a beautiful thing and like lead to great connections. And it also can be a way that people can get taken advantage of. So being able to see like, oh, look, like my brain perceives they're friendly and then my brain wants to be friendly back. Like, obviously, I'm a big fan of being friendly, but it can also be important to pause and be like, wait, do I like what's happening here? Am I being how I want to be, or am I being the way I think I have to be to like be friendly and polite? And then it is also in the other case, if the other person's doing something that we don't like. So I've seen this happen with myself so many times in my relationship with my partner. And I'm going to use that example because I love Alex and think she's a wonderful person. And like, we're both humans over here. So like sometimes she says stuff in a tone of voice that I'm not a fan of, right? But what I've noticed is if I'm judging her tone of voice, like if I have the thought that like she's being unkind and I don't check that and go like, okay, I maybe want to like talk to her about that tone of voice or about like if I perceive it's being unkind, but do I want to do it in an unkind way myself because of that mirroring? Usually I don't. If I have the self-control and the willpower and the intentionality and mindfulness in that moment to notice that, then I'm probably like, I need to like take a step back and think about who I want to be, even if I want to talk about like an observable behavior that's like not working for me or that I don't like. And I put all those caveats in there because like I'm a human just like y'all. So sometimes I don't realize my own perceptions and I do the mirroring. And then it's like later I'm like, why did I fucking do that? Why did I act like that? That's like not who I want to be as a person, or that didn't feel good to me. Why did I do that? And so I'm definitely not always catching this in the moment. And so don't beat yourself up if you don't either. Don't beat yourself up in general, but definitely don't beat yourself up for that. Okay, so how is this related to work? Well, in work stuff, I think it can happen either way, right? If someone is using mirroring to try to get us to do something at work we don't want to do, then it's useful to notice like, oh, I may feel compelled, like in a weird, subtle way to like say yes to something or do something I don't want to do. And so you can check in and be like, oh, is this a mirroring thing? And do I want to step out of that mirroring? So mirroring, again, is something that so often happens subconsciously. And so much of what coaching is about taking stuff that we do or that happens subconsciously and bringing it up to the conscious level so that we can make choices about it. So we can make choices like if it's subconscious belief systems that are rooted in, you know, patriarchy, white supremacy, ableism, we may want to say like, I'm going to divest from that way of thinking. Or if it's subconscious behavior of like, oh, I have to be polite or I have to like mirror because this person's being kind. I have to like say yes, even if I don't want to. We just want to bring that up to the conscious level so then we can like make a choice about what we're going to do. And then no matter what choice we make, we can have our own back and love ourselves and know that maybe it works out exactly the way we wanted and maybe it didn't, but we're imperfect humans and we can still love ourselves. So again, mirroring is something that someone else may do, and they may be doing it on purpose, and they may be doing it without realizing it, because a lot of stuff humans do, like a lot of humans are just acting out their own subconscious programming, their own socialized conditioning. So it's not even that we necessarily have to think other people are doing something wrong or being bad. It's just about like, we don't have to mirror them no matter what they're doing. And we always get to choose what we're going to do. So if they're doing something and we think we have to behave a certain way back, it's just a moment to pause and be like, wait, what do I actually want here? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have happen? And then the one I see actually a lot more common is that someone else is going to behave in a way that doesn't meet our standards. And there's that part of us inside of us that's like, fuck you. I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be like, whatever. I know that feeling so well because it's a feeling that I used to experience a lot and I still experience a lot, but I do have a different relationship to it now with all the coaching tools. And the a lot has come down in stature quite a bit, but it's still one I'm very familiar with. And I just think that's a moment to pause and think about like, I almost think about it like I'm so powerful that you can't control me by how you're being. And I like that frame because it empowers me and it recenters me in my own journey of like, who do I want to be? Not like, well, they started it or like, it's not fair or like they deserve blah, blah, blah. It's like I've talked about this example before that I saw this video and it was about like the best self-defense move is to not have the fight with somebody, because if you're having the fight with somebody, first of all, you got to fight better, but you also like, if you hurt them, then you could be in a lot of legal trouble. And so the best self-defense move is de-escalation. I forgot that word a minute ago, but then I remembered. So being able to de-escalate the fight. And so many people don't want to do this because they get that like righteous indignation of like, well, you fucking started it and I'm going to finish it. Or like, you deserve this. And I'm not arguing with you about that. I have no opinion about that. That's like for you to decide. The only thing I want to point out is just, I want you to get to have as much of the life that you want as you can. And sometimes when we do that mirroring, when we're reactive versus choosing on purpose who we want to be in that moment, we actually get less of what we want because our brain has like taken this like sideways direction of like, well, they started it, we're matching them, like we have to do what they're doing. And I just think that's something to be aware of. This world is full of a bunch of bullshit and it's imperfect and like terrible stuff is happening all the time. And I'm sad about that. And also, I still believe you can have an incredible experience and have a huge impact on the world. And so if that's what you want, I want to help you be able to have that, knowing that like lots of other adult humans and child humans probably, but like let's talk about adult humans. Lots of other adult humans are going to behave in ways you don't like. And you're always allowed to do whatever you want in response to that. But I want you to see that choice, that you have a choice in how you respond to that. And you don't have to just mirror them just because like what they're doing is rude or disrespectful or hurtful or harmful. You don't have to join them in that energy, but there will probably be a part of you that will feel like compelled to do that. And not because you're bad. Again, because like that's part of being in a social mammal species. I think I'm a lay person. I'm not an expert in being a social mammal, although I do personally have 38 years of experience in it. That's what I chalk it up to, is like being a social mammal, and just realizing that like I get to decide is so powerful and has allowed me to make choices in situations that have led to more of what I want versus like more of whatever the other person was doing. And again, I don't think like we should underestimate the other side of it either, that sometimes people are going to be behaving in a way that maybe feels really nice and wonderful, but then they may ask for something that like you don't want to give or doesn't feel good to you to give, or they may ask you to do extra work, or they may ask you to like cover for them with the boss, and you may want to be able to step out of that, what seems like positive mirroring. Also, I've had situations like this before where I had like really good friends who asked me to do stuff that I was like, this feels wrong. This doesn't feel good or ethical or like who I want to be as a person. And I felt really conflicted because I really liked them as people. And honestly, I'm sure I've been that person for other people too. I'm sure there are times when I wanted someone to do something, for me, or to go along with something with me that they didn't want to do. And I probably did lean on that, like, oh, we're friends, because I was younger and didn't know a lot of the stuff I know now. So if you've also been that person, I personally think it's okay to forgive yourself and learn from it. And I think that actually is really useful. I think sometimes when we struggle with other people, it's also because we've done the thing that other people have done and we're struggling with forgiving ourselves for being human. So let me just say, this isn't actually a podcast about forgiveness, and you don't have to forgive anybody. You don't have to forgive yourself either. But I think it's useful in a very pragmatic way to be able to do that, because it's really hard to give yourself the space to learn and grow and become more of who you want to be if you never let go of the things you did before that now don't align to your current values and vision for yourself. I would say there's probably no humans who don't have things they've done that didn't align, don't have things they've done that don't align to their current values. And sometimes even as we're doing things, we know they don't align to our values. And it's not perfect. It's not who I want to be to have moments like that. But I think it's just part of what we're doing here as human beings. That's a bit of a tangent and a bit off topic, but I do think it's important, because I think a lot of times people with really high standards aren't just struggling with other people. We're also struggling with ourselves and the high standards we have for ourselves that we're just like never actually able to live up to because they're impossible. I should probably do a whole other episode on high standards, because I've learned so much about those and how they can be a weapon, even when they seem like something that's helping us, but we're not going to go too much into that today. Also, I just had a realization like right now recording this that I think even the way we look at ourselves can have an element of mirroring, right? Like if we see something in our own past, like I was just thinking of in that like weird, very vague example, like if we see things from our own past where we're like, ugh, past me like didn't live up to my standards, that is another area where we maybe do mirroring, where we're like looking at our past self and seeing the way our past self like doesn't measure up to who we want to be. And then the way we're being as a person now towards our past self mirrors the way, like what we perceive about that past self, right? Like I perceive that sometimes my past self wasn't a great friend. And when I perceive that and I like live inside of that and I mirror that instead of pausing to be intentional, then I'm not a great friend to myself right now. And I'm also not a great friend to that past self who fucked things up and also did really beautiful, wonderful things. Like she was neither 100% good nor 100% bad. She was neither 100% like living up to my values nor 100% fucking them up, actually. So that's such a fun, interesting point. The mirroring is everywhere, y'all. And this is what I love. Well, one of many things I love about like coaching and thought work is that there's always deeper and deeper layers of this work to get to, and things you can be like doing a podcast and like teaching on something and suddenly have a moment where you understand it at a deeper level. And that's just so fucking fun. I love that. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And I know y'all are out in the world like listening to this later, but I really do feel like it's a conversation. And I feel like my understanding of my own work deepens by having these conversations with all of you. So thank you for that. I appreciate all of you so much. Okay, so let's review. When I'm talking about emotional and behavioral mirroring, what I'm talking about is that whatever you perceive consciously or subconsciously other people as doing, you may subconsciously start mirroring them. And that may be fine and dandy and super fun and a great thing. Or it may have you doing stuff you don't want to do, which could be giving things you don't want to give, saying yes to things you don't want to say yes to. Or it could be, behaving in ways that actually don't align with your values because what you're perceiving about the other person is that they're behaving in ways that don't align with your values. And again, this is not to judge or shame ourselves for any of it. And I would invite you to have compassion for yourself and for the way that like a lot of this is happening subconsciously and like you're not even aware of it. It's not even about judging or shaming the other person. It's about understanding that this is something that happens at a subconscious level and then bringing that up to consciousness and then deciding if it's what you want to do and who you want to be or if there's something else you want to do and something else you want to be. I feel like so often in life, we feel like we don't have choices or that our hand is being forced or that like we simply have to do things a certain way because of the circumstances. And I really deeply get that. And also, I don't think it's true and I don't want to subscribe to it because I want to empower you and I want you to feel empowered and be empowered to create more of what you want at work, in your lives, in every area. And I just think so much more is available for you than you may realize. And that being able to step out of mirroring is one way for you to get and create and have more of what you want and to create the impact you want to create on the world, right? To circle back to what we started this podcast talking about and the things that are happening politically in the country where I live. And I'm sure there are things happening where you live too, wherever that is. Sometimes we also have to step out of mirroring in order to do something about that or in order to show up the way we want to. And it's not that we have to, it's just like, I just want you to see that that's an option too. If you're like, oh, look, I want a mirror and I'm going to fucking do it and I know I'm doing it and I'm going to have my own back about it and I'm not going to like beat myself up later, fucking have at it. I just want you to see all of your options, not just the ones you've been conditioned to see and not just the ones that you're going to like feel compelled to do because you're a social mammal. All right, that's what I got for y'all this week. Have an incredible week. If possible, take care of yourselves, be excellent to yourselves, and let me know what you want to hear me talk about on the podcast in the future. And if you want to take this work deeper, if you want to have conversations like these, but all about your own thing, whatever is going on with you every week, come have a consult with me. First of all, we'll take the time on the consult to really dig into what's going on with you. We're going to create some helpful stuff right in there. And then if it seems like a good fit, I'll tell you how I'm working with clients. All right, y'all, I love you. Have a great week if you can. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Love Your Job Before You Leave It. We'll have another episode for you next week. And in the meantime, if you're feeling super fired up, head on over to CoreyLynn.com for more guidance and resources.